Well, hello everyone, and welcome to another edition of the DC Capstone Report. It's great to have everyone back again this week as we get to talk about a victory over the Utah State Aggies. Well, I'm so glad that all of you tuned in last week to our podcast. Lance and I are just so appreciative of each one of you. Each week, the viewership seems to get bigger and bigger, and I see as we get in further into the year, I just hope that you continue to tune in and listen to what we have to say. Also want to remind you that Lance has some other sites out there that would have opportunity for you to get involved in and get some great content, and that is RollTideBama.com and FreelancePictures.com. Lance does a great job of taking pictures, so if you're listening and you have an interest in the football team or the $1 Million Band or the cheerleaders, the Elephant Stomp, anything like that, there's some great pictures on his website that you can go and get copies of. So we appreciate you tuning in. We look forward to continuing our podcast each and every week right here with the DC Capstone Report. Well, this week on the podcast, we're going to start out in the first segment with a review of the game against Utah State. In our second segment, we're going to talk about the players of the game against Utah State. In our third and final segment today, we'll preview the upcoming game against the Texas Longhorns. You're listening to the DC Capstone Report. The DC Capstone Report is featured each Tuesday morning on the Martin Houston Show at Tide 100.9. You can listen live at Tide100.9.com. Well, here we are back on the first segment of the DC Capstone Report. Welcome back, everyone, for another week. We're going to review in this first segment the game against the Utah State Aggies. Well, Alabama comes away with a victory, 55-0. 55-0. We were very close on our prediction. We predicted 52-9. I expected they would get 3 field goals, but they didn't even make any field goals. 55-0. So you can't start reviewing the game without talking about the defense first. Anytime that you pitch a shutout in football, you've done something, no matter who your opponent is. But getting a 55-0 score against this Utah State Aggies team, in my opinion, is a big accomplishment. Now, I want everybody to understand, we've had a lot of people talking about a lesser opponent this week with Utah State, but Utah State was not a Mercer, not a Duquesne, not a Alabama State, not Alabama A&M, not a Bethune-Cookman. We're talking about a team that went 11-3 last year, has a great coach in Blake Anderson, and they had a great game plan for Alabama. They just didn't be able to execute it and overcome the talent that Alabama had. So I think this 55-0 score by our defense is most impressive. When you look at the defense overall, I was impressed with a couple of things. Number one, the defensive line, as we predicted, was able to sub in and out without any drop-off in play. And that kept us fresh late into the game, so that we didn't have any late game breakdowns. Even when our second and third teamers came in, we were able to keep them out of the end zone, keep them from getting close to scoring. As a matter of fact, our defensive play as far as the passing game was phenomenal. The first play on the first pass they threw was for 23 yards. And then the remainder of the game, our defensive passing game held them to less than 63 yards passing for the remainder of the game. So it was just a great effort by our defensive backs, our linebackers, our defensive linemen, our rushers, overall in the passing game. So I like to think that we've really improved on our defensive pass skills, and it looked so in this game. The second thing was our run defense. Our run defense was great as usual. The defensive line, the edge rushers, and the middle linebackers did a great job of stopping the run game. Their leading rusher last week against Connecticut had over 150 yards. In this game, you look at the stats in this game, their leading rusher, Robert Briggs, had 28 yards rushing. So we held them really, really good in the rushing game on our defensive side of the ball. So overall, defense was great, pitched a shutout, didn't let them score, and really had some good plays. On offense, I thought we had a really great offensive game plan. That way they schemed against us to try to make us one-dimensional. We were still able to pass the ball effectively. And our wide receivers really stepped up to the plate. All of our starting wide receivers and our young wide receivers came in and showed some really flashes of excellent play down the stretch. Bryce Young did a great job of getting us in the right place when we needed it, and we scored 55 points. So overall, we did a really good job on the offensive side of the ball. Only breakdown I saw was the block punt that we had late in the game. It seemed like just a breakdown in a setup. As a matter of fact, it's something that we get helpful to use for later in the year. Coach Anderson from Utah said they saw something in the setups that they would believe they could get a block, and so now that'll help us make that better down the road. But overall, I thought it was a really good game. We saw our offensive play well, our defense played great, and I was just very impressed. Now, there's some naysayers out there, and I say oftentimes that Alabama football fans are the most fickle fans there are. And I've heard some naysayers talking about some negatives out of this game. And I want to address two of those negatives, which I think are just completely off base. One was we didn't have any sacks in the ball game. Well, that's to me not a negative. We had some very good plays where we pressured the quarterback, hit the quarterback. As a matter of fact, knocked their starting quarterback after 3 series out of the game because he'd been hit so hard. And the reason we didn't have many sacks in the game was not because we weren't rushing the quarterback. It was because of the scheme that the coach of Utah State put on the field to take a one-step drop and get rid of the ball. One-step drop and get rid of the ball, and we were still hitting the quarterback on a one-step drop. If we were playing against a traditional offense with a 3-step drop to the pocket, we would have had multiple sacks in this game based on our defensive interior lineman play and our edge rushing play. As it was, they were getting the ball out fast. That's the way they wanted to do. They know how good our edge rushers was, and it's proven. Nobody could really stop Will Anderson Jr., Dallas Turner, Chris Braswell when they were rushing in this game. So I think that's a misnomer to say we didn't have any sacks and that was a bad thing. It was just the way they schemed. The other thing that people were talking about is a consistency in our running game, lack of a running game. We had a lot of running yards, but they attributed a lot of that to Bryce Young and the way he was able to run with the ball. But let me tell you this. If you know anything about football and you saw the defensive scheme that Utah State ran against Alabama, it was clear from the very first down that what they were trying to do is to make Alabama one-dimensional and throw the ball. Blake Anderson, their coach Anderson, thought in the very beginning of the pregame was saying they thought they could take advantage of some of their defensive backs on our wide receivers, and they were trying to put us in a position to pass the ball. Well, that didn't work very well. We got multiple touchdown passes, multiple plays to our wide receivers in the game. So, but what it did was they put 9, 10, sometimes 11 people on the line of scrimmage so that Bryce Young would normally get out of a running play if he was in a running play. But they did it so many times that we had to run plays that were into the middle of the line of scrimmage and didn't gain many yards. So I don't see that as a negative. Let us see what we do against a traditional setup that we might face this week against Texas, and then we'll see if our running game is inconsistent. But let's don't get down on our linemen. They did a great job, I thought, of protecting Bryce Young and opening up some alleys to run through when they had opportunity to do so. So I believe it's a lot in this game to talk about great things. I know you always want to improve. We got some things to improve on, like our special teams. We could improve on that block, and there's a few other things that we can improve on down the stretch. But I don't think right now is a time to be worried about our defense not getting sacks or our run game not getting more runs. So overall, I thought it was a great game, a great victory against Utah State, 55-0, a great score. Well, here we are in the second segment of the DC Capstone Report. Welcome back. We're so glad you tuned in to listen to us again this week. We're going to look at our second segment. We're going to talk about our players of the game against Utah State, our players of the game. First, let's go to the defensive side of the ball. And my first player of the game was Jalen Moody. I just was really excited about Jalen Moody. He won the starting job, came out, did a great job. He had 3 tackles. He had 3 assists. He was flying all over the field. He was involved in multiple plays and just did a really good job. Good to see somebody like him who stuck around so long, creating value for themselves and being able to continue on his success in the Alabama football program. So one of my defensive players of the game is Jalen Moody. My other defensive player of the game is Chris Braswell. If you didn't see it, Chris Braswell didn't start, but he had 2 tackles and 2 assists. Every time he came in, it was clear to see that he was by far a better athlete than those he was going up against. You know, you got 3 great edge rushers on this team, and Will Anderson Jr., Dallas Turner and Chris Braswell. When Chris Braswell got an opportunity, he did a great play for himself and for the team. In my opinion, this is a situation where we're going to see Chris Braswell get on the field more and more, especially when we play against conventional pocket passing teams. I think he's going to slide in there at that other linebacker spot and be a stand-up rusher, and we'll be rushing Dallas Turner, Chris Braswell, and Will Anderson Jr., which will be extremely hard to stop on passing downs for any offense that we come up against down the road. But I'm just excited about Chris Braswell. In my opinion, I'm going to make a prediction here that if he continues to progress like I think he will, and he'll get on the field in those playing times, he's going to create so much value for himself that I think he'll be a defensive player taken in the first round of the NFL draft who didn't even start for Alabama this year. So I'm excited about Chris Braswell. He was my second defensive player of the game. On offense, Bryce Young has to be your number one offensive player of the game. In my opinion, he came out and did everything that he was, with all the pressure on him from his last year's Heisman win to see what he's going to do this year. He did everything that he could do to even make a name for himself even better than last year. So the one thing that people knocked on him last year was he didn't run the ball when he had opportunity to extend plays on third down. Well, he did that in this game. He passed the ball extremely well, very efficiently. In the passing game, he was 18 of 28, 195 yards and 5 touchdowns. In rushing the ball, he had 5 carries for 100 yards and 1 touchdown. So he's responsible for 6 touchdowns, 5 passing and 1 running the ball. So I think Bryce Young really showed up in this, showed he's not afraid to get out there, run the ball when he has the chance, make some moves in open space, and then get down to save himself from those tough tackles by those defensive backs that are headhunting. So I think he did a really good job in this game, and I'm proud that he's one of my offensive players of the game. My second offensive player of the game is another player that I'm so proud of for sticking around and taking advantage of an opportunity, and that is Trayshawn Holden. Trayshawn Holden in this game, in my opinion, had a great game for a wide receiver. All of our starting wide receivers had great games. Kobe Prentice did a great job. It's easy to see how he is a freshman starting. Jermaine Burton was a real deal transfer in. And did a great job as well. But Trayshawn Holden had 5 receptions for 70 yards, was leading the receivers for the most receiving yards, and 2 touchdowns. And in my opinion, has really blossomed this year into the player that we all thought he could be. But being able to stick around when other players last year passed him by with more playing time, and then take advantage of an opportunity this year to get into the game, I was so excited to see Trayshawn Holden really have a great game. So on players of the game, on defense, Jalen Moody and Chris Braswell, and on offense, Bryce Young and Trayshawn Holden. Well, here we are. Welcome back to the DC Capstone Report, and our third and final segment is the preview against the upcoming game against the Texas Longhorns. It'll be our first road game of the season. It'll be a big game that's been circled on our schedule for a while. You know, this year was the time where we went to a different scheduling system, where instead of scheduling that first game against the big opponent on a neutral field, we started scheduling home and away games. So this will be our first one of those series with Texas. We go there this year. They'll come here next year. But being on the road, 11 o'clock kickoff, be an early kick. It'll be an opportunity for us to really go out there and see what it's like to play against these Texas Longhorns. Now, they're coached by Steve Sarkisian, who is well familiar with Alabama football, but we are also well familiar with his offensive schemes, and we were able to go against it in practice so many times. So I think this is going to be a build-up game. It's one of those situations where you got a former coach for Nick Saban, former coach at Alabama, an opportunity now head coach to come back and beat his former mentor. And we're on the road. We got game day going to be there. Fox Nation's going to be there. So all eyes are going to be the first game on the schedule, a big marquee matchup with Texas versus Alabama. The question is going to be, is Texas back? Well, in this game, I believe that Alabama comes out and plays to the Bama standard. There won't be much left at deciding who's going to win this game early on. I believe we've got to get by that first emotion. I think Texas is going to be emotional, playing at home, going to play with a lot of emotion. But as they always said in the past, I think Coach Bryant said it, everyone plays with emotion, and that emotion serves you well until you get punched in the mouth. And I think that that's what this defense is going to have to do. So my keys to the game are on defense. We got to play to a standard, a high standard, and punch them in the mouth. Make them want to quit, as Coach Saban has said in the past. Dominate your opponent. And I think we have the skilled players at the defensive positions to do just that. So the first key would be for us to stop the run. I think a lot of Texas schemes are to run the ball with Bijan Robinson, who is a great running back. I think it's to run the ball, set up play action passes, and take shots down the field. Quinn Evers is a new quarterback for them. Got his first start last week. I believe the second key of the game is for us to put pressure on the quarterback. And I believe we can do that with Will Anderson Jr., Dallas Turner, and Chris Braswell, as well as our interior linemen. I believe we can put a big rush on the quarterback and move him into making some mistakes that he normally wouldn't make. So I think the two keys to the game on defense is to stop the run and then put pressure on the quarterback. And I believe that this defense team for Alabama is built just to do that. And I expect them to show up in this game and show up really well and do a great job, adhering to the Bama standard. On offense, I think we're going to have to run the ball. I believe Texas is going to want to stop the run and put us in passing situations where we have opportunity to make mistakes. So the keys to the game on offense, in my opinion, are to run the ball effectively. I think we're going to see that this week. I don't think we'll see Texas in a lot of 10, 11-man fronts. I think they'll play normal pass coverage and normal run coverage, and we'll have an opportunity to get a hat on a hat, move some people out of the way, and then make some runs consistently in the running game. So I think we can do that. Then we're going to set up a great opportunity for Bryce Young to take some shots down the field on play action passes. So I really believe that running the ball is going to really effectively in this game is going to set us up for a big game down the stretch. And then when we have opportunity to throw the ball, we can't make any mistakes. We need to catch the ball, secure the ball, and we need to make sure that we don't make any mistakes. We can't give them any opportunities to gain momentum in this game. If we can just really play well and throttle them in the running game and then pass well, don't make any mistakes, then I think we're going to come away with a big victory in this game. In my opinion, I believe Alabama goes into Austin, Texas, and does just that. We impose our will on them defensively, and then we impose our will on them offensively to a point where we win this game without much fanfare. And I believe the final score in this game is going to be Alabama 45, Texas 10. Well, that's it for the DC Capstone Report this week. I appreciate everyone tuning in. Don't forget to go to Lance's other sites, RollTideBama.com and FreelancePictures.com, for some great Alabama pictures and great Alabama content. Well, until next time, this is DC with the DC Capstone Report signing off and saying Roll Tide.